Everyone says a man can outrun his past. We both know the truth. The past rides faster than any horse alive. Today's story is about Barrett and Lila Crow, where blood-soaked scars turn into something that almost looks like redemption. Out on the wide Montana prairie, under a sky that never forgets, it all began with a single choice: to lower a gun instead of pulling the trigger. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. I stood in that damned barn with a loaded Colt burning in my palm, and Lila Crow stood 10 feet away, looking straight through me like she could see every sin I'd ever tried to bury. She deserved more than this. We both knew it. No tears, not a flicker of fear, just that steady gaze, the kind that hits a man harder than a bullet ever could. She stood there in the yellow lamplight, quiet as judgment. Her shadow stretched across the hay like a long black road, waiting on me to decide who I was going to be. The beast I'd already proven myself to be, or the scrap of man still hiding in the ruins. Outside, the wind held its breath. The horses stamped and shifted, and Wade Colter, my boss, my judge, sat in the big house waiting on proof. One shot. That was all he asked for. One squeeze of the trigger, and I'd be back where I started. A hired killer who knew how to dig a hole deep enough to bury his conscience beside the body. I always figured that was the toll a man paid to keep breathing. But standing there, staring at Lila, I started wondering if I'd been wrong about survival all along. You think this kind of story ends simple? It doesn't. I can't say for certain when I stopped counting cattle and started counting corpses. Maybe it was that winter. Maybe it was long before, back when I still wore Union blue and followed orders like they were gospel. God knows my hands shook every time I pulled the trigger. Dakota Territory, 1876. 3 months after Custer rode his men straight into hell at Little Bighorn. The army was furious, frightened, looking for somebody to punish. We hit a Lakota camp at first light. They told us it was hostile. They promised warriors. What we found were elders, women clutching babies, families trying to wake to another day. And we did what scared soldiers do when they're too young and too obedient to question commands. I still hear it sometimes. The screaming, the way it rolled across frozen earth, the way it thinned out. One voice at a time, until all that remained was smoke drifting into a gray sky, and silence so heavy it pressed on your lungs, and the sound of my own breathing, ragged and hollow. I was 24 years old. By sundown, I was something I didn't recognize in any reflection. You want to know if I regret it? If I've spent 6 years begging God to wash me clean? No. Regret's a hollow word. It doesn't raise the dead. It doesn't scrub blood from your skin. It just makes weak men feel better about themselves. I earned what I carry, and I carry it still. 6 years later, I drifted into Montana territory like wreckage washing up on a riverbank. The war was done. The frontier was shrinking. And men like me, men who could kill without asking why, were useful. Wade Colter found me in a saloon in Billings, drunk, mean, itching for trouble. He didn't ask about my past, just offered work. His ranch, Triple Crown. 30 hands under me, 5,000 head of cattle. Good pay. Steady work. No questions. I took it. Not because I believed in second chances, but because I didn't know what else to do with hands that had only ever known how to break things. Not because I was chasing redemption. I wasn't. I just didn't know what else a man like me was meant to do, with hands built for breaking bones and pulling triggers. Winter in Montana doesn't ease in. It storms through early and refuses to leave. That November, we were running thin on help. Wade Colter had a fresh batch of wild mustangs he wanted gentled before the hard freeze locked the ground solid. They were prime stock. The kind that could fetch real money in Miles City or Helena. Strong backs, clean legs, good blood. Mean as rattlesnakes, though. Stubborn enough to break a man before you ever got a saddle on them. I was riding the fence line one morning when I spotted her. A lone rider coming up the long dirt trail toward the ranch house. She rode like she belonged there, like horse and rider were cut from the same hide. No bouncing, no wasted motion. Smooth, steady, like the saddle was grown into her spine. For half a heartbeat, I thought maybe she was Crow, come to stake claim to land that had once been hers before Washington put ink to paper and called it progress. My hand dropped to my Colt before I even thought about it. Old reflex. Maybe a bad one. Maybe the only reason I was still breathing. But as she drew closer, I saw her clearly. Mixed blood, high cheekbones, dark braid hanging down her back, crow in her bones. But her eyes were blue, not pale, not soft. A hard, piercing blue that made a man feel like he was being weighed and measured. I had the uneasy sense she could already see through me, past the ranch coat, past the gun belt, to everything underneath. She pulled up 10 feet away and didn't dismount. Just studied me, like she was deciding whether I was worth the trouble of speaking to. "Do you need someone who knows horses?" she asked. Her voice was low and even. No tremble, no edge of pleading. "We don't hire women," I said. It was the usual answer. Safe. Simple. She didn't blink. "I didn't ask what you hire. I asked if you need someone who can handle horses." She shifted slightly in the saddle, and I noticed how precise she was. Every movement deliberate, controlled. "I hear you've got a barn full of Mustangs nobody else can touch," she went on. "I can touch them." I should have told her to turn around. Should have told her to ride back to whatever settlement she came from. But Wade Colter wanted those horses ready. And something about her, calm, unafraid, certain, made me hesitate. No fear in her posture. No hunger, either. Just confidence. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lila Crow." "That your father's name?" "It was my husband's. Mason Rourke." She paused. "He's dead." No crack in her voice. No pity. Just fact. I respected that more than I cared to admit. The loudest mourners are usually the ones who loved the least. Silence carries weight. "You any good?" I said. "Or do you just talk like you are?" A shadow of a smile touched her mouth. Not playful, not sweet, just steady. "Put me in with your worst one," she said. "If I'm still standing in 10 minutes, you hire me. If I'm not—" She held my gaze without flinching. "Bury me where I fall, and don't waste another thought on it." The hands had named him Diablo, coal-black Mustang, one sharp white blaze between his eyes, and a temper mean enough to lay 2 wranglers up in bed with busted ribs. We'd roped him out of a wild band running high in the Beartooths. He was a sight to behold. Muscle, fire, pride. And he wouldn't bow to a soul. Wade Colter wanted him broke and standing stud by spring. I'd already started thinking it might be a mercy to put a bullet in him instead. I walked Lila Crow down to the round pen. The men trailed after us, not because they believed in her, because they wanted a show. Maybe see her tossed and stomped. Winter makes men cruel with boredom. Diablo was already worked into a frenzy when we stepped up, circling the rails, blowing steam, whites of his eyes flashing like lightning. Lila stayed at the gate a long time, just watching. Didn't shift. Didn't speak. "You getting cold feet?" I asked. "No," she said softly. "I'm listening." "Listening to what? He ain't preaching. He's fixing to kick your skull in." She turned her head toward me. There was weight in her eyes. something old. "Everything speaks, Mr. Barrett," she said, quiet as wind through dry grass. "Most folks are too busy hearing themselves to notice." Then she lifted the latch and stepped inside. The men went silent. I rested my hand on my Colt. If that stallion so much as lunged wrong, I was ready to drop him where he stood. But Lila didn't charge him, didn't wave her arms or crack a whip. She walked to the center of the pen and began to sing. I didn't know the words. Crow, I figured. Old language, the kind that hums in your ribs instead of your ears. It wasn't a performance, more like a low, steady murmur, a rhythm that rolled through the dirt and up your boots like prairie wind brushing tall grass. And slow, so slow you'd miss it if you blinked. Diablo quit pacing. His ears tipped toward her. The fire in his breathing cooled. She kept that same tone, same stillness. Minutes dragged by. Then the stallion stepped forward. One step. Then another. The whole pen seemed to shrink around them as he crossed the dirt, head high at first, then lowering inch by inch, until he stood right in front of her, close enough for her to lift a hand. She reached out and laid her palm against his muzzle. Behind me, the hands muttered, half curses, half prayers. I didn't speak at all. 20 years around horses, and I'd never seen anything like it. Lila's hand moved along his neck, voice still low and steady. And that savage brute, the same beast who'd nearly crippled grown men, dropped his head and let her. "Hell," one of the wranglers breathed. "She's some kind of witch." Maybe. Or maybe she understood something we'd forgotten out here. That power ain't about breaking something down. It's about knowing how to meet it without trying to crush it first, about hearing what lies beneath the noise. That was what she understood. I hired Lila Crow before the dust settled in that pen. She bunked in the barn with the rest of the hands. No special treatment, no favors. Same rules I gave every man drawing wages from Wade Colter's ranch. Do your job. Keep your head down. Don't stir trouble. She followed them cleaner than most. Truth be told, she outworked half the crew. Within 2 weeks, she'd turned 3 Mustangs that no one else could get near without catching teeth or hooves. The laughter stopped quick after that. Respect came slow, but it came. Most of the men adjusted. Most. There's always one who can't stomach being shown up by a woman. His name was Brock Tanner. Drifted in that fall looking for wages and whiskey. Big shoulders. Bigger temper. Mean when sober. Worse when drunk. The kind of man who thinks fear is the same thing as respect. He'd been circling Lila since the day she arrived. Low remarks. Half-spoken filth. Nothing clean enough to fire him over. Just enough to make the air sour. I should have shut it down. I didn't. Friday came. Pay envelopes handed out. The boys saddled up and rode to town chasing whiskey and cards. I stayed behind. I usually did. A saloon invites questions. Questions invite answers I don't care to give. I was in my cabin, bent over the books, when shouting ripped through the night from the direction of the barn. By the time I reached it, the damage was done. Brock Tanner lay flat on the dirt, blood running thick from a split skull. Lila stood over him, gripping a shovel, chest rising hard, eyes blazing like she'd just walked out of a fire. 2 hands stood off to the side, backing away slow with their palms up. One of them, Eli Granger, still green as spring grass, looked at me like he'd seen the devil. "Boss, we tried," he stammered. He'd been drinking since noon. He cornered her in the tack room. We heard her yell. "By the time we got there, he's dead," Lila said. Not loud, not hysterical. Flat. "I killed him." I stepped closer and looked down. One side of Brock's head was crushed in. Blood soaked into the straw beneath him. Dark and heavy. No doubt about it. I'd seen death. Caused it too. And standing there, I didn't feel shock or horror, just calculation. If word got out, Lila would hang, or rot in a cell until the world forgot her. Either way, she'd be finished. And Brock Tanner? He'd been rotten long before he hit the dirt. Dying didn't polish him up any. Eli, I said quietly, you and Hank Doss get the wagon. Eli's eyes widened. Boss, we can't just— Yes, we can. I let my gaze sweep the others. Brock Tanner quit, said he didn't like the pay, saddled up and rode out. That's what happened. Silence hung thick. Anybody who can't remember it that way is welcome to follow him. No one spoke. They all knew what Brock had tried. They'd heard the shouting, seen the look in Lila's eyes. Out here, justice doesn't wear a badge. It just gets done. That was the only justice that counted out there. We buried Brock Tanner that same night, dug the hole deep beyond North Ridge where the ground was hard and the coyotes wouldn't catch his scent. I slipped the men extra pay to keep their memories straight. When it was finished, when the last shovelful was packed firm and the prairie lay silent beneath a sky sharp with stars, Lila Crow and I stood alone beside the fresh dirt. You didn't have to do that, she said, her voice low. Yeah, I answered. I did. Why? I didn't have a clean reply. Maybe I knew the truth, but speaking it would have made it heavier than I was ready to shoulder. Because you weren't meant to swing for defending yourself, I said at last. She said nothing for a long stretch. The wind slid through the tall grass. Somewhere far off, a coyote called into the dark. I know what you are, Cole Barrett, she said finally. I knew the first day I rode up that trail. My jaw tightened. I can see it, she went on. The blood you carry, the weight of it. Then why stay? I asked. She met my eyes. The dangerous ones are the men who've made peace with what they've done. They sleep easy. They walk light. Her gaze didn't waver. You don't. You're still drowning in yours. Means there's something left worth saving. She turned back toward the barn. I reached out and caught her arm. Not rough, just enough to pause her. What about your husband? I asked. Her face went cold. Mason Rourke drank, she said. He hit. One night he drank too much and slipped from his saddle. Broke his neck. No tremble. No pity. He left me with bruises and a grave. She pulled free. What I did tonight was self-defense, she said. Clean and clear. Her eyes cut into mine. Can you say the same about yours? She walked away, boots whispering through the grass. I stayed behind in the dark, ghosts crowding close. For the first time in 6 years, I wondered if maybe I didn't have to carry them alone. We didn't fall in love. Don't mistake it for that. Love belongs to people who believe in fresh starts and clean endings. We were too marked for that, too stained. But we found something else. Understanding. On bitter nights, after the hands were asleep, Lila and I would sit by the stove in the barn and talk. About small things. About everything that mattered. About the lives we'd buried. About the people we'd become. She told me about her mother, Nayeli. Crow through and through. Dead when Lila was 12. She spoke of her father, Grant Mercer, a white man who married into her mother's world, then abandoned it when things grew hard, left her caught between two bloodlines, belonging to neither. I told her about the war, about Dakota Territory, about that frozen morning I could never outrun, no matter how many miles I put behind me. Do you think we deserve forgiveness? I asked her once. No, she said. Maybe that's not what matters. She fed another stick into the stove. Maybe the point is learning to live with it. Carry it without letting it rot you from the inside. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to. God help me. I wanted to believe a man like Cole Barrett could still find something close to redemption. That a man could spill blood and still claw his way back toward something like grace. I wanted that to be true. It isn't. The world doesn't hand out absolution just because you're tired of carrying what you've done. I learned that lesson the way men like me always do, when it's too late. 3 weeks after we put Brock Tanner in the ground, Wade Colter sent word for me. He was seated behind his heavy oak desk, a crystal bottle of whiskey beside him. The office smelled of leather and smoke. His face wasn't angry. It was worse, disappointed. Maybe even sorry. "We've got a problem, Cole," he said. "What kind?" "The kind where my foreman buries a body on my land and figures I won't notice." My stomach dropped cold. "How'd you—" "I'm not a fool," Wade Colter cut in. "Brock Tanner didn't ride off without his pay. His saddle's still in my barn, and one of your boys got drunk in town and couldn't keep his mouth shut." He poured himself a drink. Didn't offer me one. "I rode out to North Ridge," he went on. "Found the grave." There wasn't anything I could deny. He leaned back in his chair. "Here's where we stand. That woman killed a man on my property. You covered it up. That makes you both criminals." He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "I could hand you over to the marshal. Let the law take its swing. She'd hang." His eyes rested on me. "You'd be lucky to see daylight in 10 years. Then he smiled. Cold. Empty. "Or, you show me where your loyalty lies." I didn't speak. "Handle the problem," he said. "Tonight, 1 bullet. We bury this clean, and it never gets mentioned again." He slid his revolver across the desk toward me, the same iron I'd carried to defend his herd. The same gun I once swore I'd never point at someone who didn't deserve it. "She's no threat to you," I said. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to another man. "She's a liability," Wade Colter answered. "And so are you, if you won't do what's necessary." He stood. "You've got until sunrise. Take care of it." A pause. "Or I will." I found Lila Crow in the barn. She was brushing down a gelding, humming low under her breath. An old crow melody, the same one she'd used to calm that black stallion. The lantern light traced her profile, softened her, made her look younger than she was. She saw me, saw the gun, understood. "Wade Colter knows," she said. Not a question. "Yeah. And he told you to kill me." "Yeah." She set the brush aside and turned fully toward me. No panic, no pleading. Just that steady, unflinching gaze from the first day she rode up to the ranch. "Are you going to?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. And for once, that was the truth. "You've killed before," she said quietly. "Women. Children." Her eyes didn't leave mine. "What's one more?" "Don't stand there pretending you're the same as them," I said. "You're not." Her eyes held mine. "Then what are you, Cole Barrett?" The words caught in my throat, but they came anyway. "You're the first person in 6 years who made me believe I might still be worth saving." Something in her face shifted. Just a breath of softness. "Then save yourself," Lila Crow said. "Pull the trigger. Walk away. Live." Her voice didn't shake. "It's all right. I've been dying slow for a long time. This would just be quicker." I lifted the revolver. My hand didn't tremble. Too many years of drilling, too many pulls of the trigger. I knew exactly where to place the shot. 1 clean round. No suffering. She wouldn't even feel it. But I couldn't do it. Not because I loved her. not because I believed in some future waiting for us. I couldn't do it because deep inside the wreckage of who I'd become, there was still a line scratched in the dirt. And killing Lila Crow, who had only defended herself, who had shown me more mercy than I deserved, would wipe that line away forever. I lowered the gun. "Go," I said. She didn't move. "Take the fastest horse we've got. Ride north. There's a settlement near the Canadian line. Métis families. They'll shelter you." The words felt heavy, but certain. "Don't look back." "Wade Colter will hunt me," she said. "Maybe," I answered. "Maybe not." I met her eyes. "That's my burden, not yours." She stepped toward me, slow, careful, like I was the one likely to bolt. And then she surprised me. She kissed me. Not hard, not desperate, just soft and brief. A thank you, a farewell, a quiet promise that in some other life we might have met without blood between us. When she pulled away, there were tears on her lashes. First time I'd ever seen them there. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she was gone. Hooves thundered across the yard. I watched her silhouette fade into the black horizon. I stood there in the barn, revolver hanging useless at my side, wondering if I'd just spared her or doomed us both. Wade Colter found me at dawn. The lantern had burned dry hours before. I was still standing there. "Where is she?" he asked. "Gone." "And you let her ride?" "Yeah." He studied me for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Pack up." That was all. "You're finished here." I didn't argue, didn't plead. I walked back to my cabin, gathered what little I owned, saddled my horse, and rode out the way I'd come 6 years earlier. Alone. Broke. Carrying my ghosts, and one less stain on my soul than I'd expected. Now and then, folks ask what became of Lila Crow, if she reached Canada, if she's still somewhere out there breaking horses and singing those old songs her mother Nayeli once sang. I don't know. I never went looking. Some questions are meant to stay unanswered. I chose to be a man that night. Just once. And maybe that's what redemption really is. It's about drawing a line in the dirt and swearing you won't step over it, no matter what it costs you, even if it leaves you stripped down to nothing. I'm an old man now. Cole Barrett ain't the rider he used to be. My hands tremble when I lift a glass. My eyes blur at dusk. But every so often, when the sun drops low and the prairie turns gold, I catch something out of the corner of my sight. A rider. Horse moving smooth and steady across the horizon, silhouetted against fire-colored sky. Free. Maybe it's just memory playing tricks. Maybe it's a ghost I earned. Still, I choose to believe she made it. That Lila Crow crossed that border and carved out a life where no man held a gun over her future. That somewhere under a wide Canadian sky, she's breaking horses and humming the old songs Nayeli once sang to her. Whole, untouched by men like me. Now, if you'll pardon me, I've got whiskey waiting, and a few ghosts that still like the sound of my company. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening, and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours, thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, The emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.